Welcome to Cracked Info, your number one hub on everything economic, geopolitical, tech, and EVs. Do support our channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more updates and related happenings around the globe. In today's video, we bring you news on Zambia's debts to China and the recent confrontational words of Zambia's President Hakainde on Chinese President Xi, Macron, and other Western countries which have been feeding on Africans in what he addresses to Macron an abusive statement. This he said regarding Zambia's trade and investment deals some few years ago. So, which African country defaulted on Chinese loan? Zambia, which defaulted on $17 billion of its external debt 2 years ago, is China's first debt rodeo under the new so-called Common Framework Program. That makes the debt question in Zambia, Africa's second largest copper producer, bigger than just a single country. What 5 African nations are most in debt to China? Between 2000 and 2020 alone, China lent a total of $59.87 billion to African countries and has become the largest creditor to Angola, $42.6 billion, Ethiopia, $13.7 billion, Zambia, $9.8 billion, and Kenya, $9.2 billion, which are now struggling to meet their debt obligations, reported Africa Daily. Which country is trapped in China debt? An analysis from the Associated Press released a dozen of countries most indebted to China, including Pakistan, Kenya, Zambia, Laos, and Mongolia, found paying back that debt is consuming an ever greater amount of the tax revenue needed to keep schools open, provide electricity, and pay for food and fuel. Realizing the importance to relieve its country, Zambia has now, in a recent development, taken up the stage to fight and face its fears towards its debt repayment plan with China. But what was this trade investment deal all about? In the wake of 2020, the copper-rich country, Zambia became the first African nation to default on its debt payments during the COVID pandemic. It was burdened by loans and high interest rates that severely restricted the government's ability to invest in critical social programs and infrastructure development, both crucial for economic growth. Many countries suffered similar economic backdrops following recession. Following months of talks, Zambia has now successfully agreed new repayment terms with its state creditors on up to $6.3 billion. That is £5 billion debt, including over $4 billion owed to China. There had been frustration for Zambia as negotiations have been slow, with some blaming China for the delay, though Beijing denied such claims. Official sector creditors or governments say that Zambia owes about $6 billion, the lion's share owed to China, agreed to an extension of debt maturities and to a 3-year grace period on interest payments, reports say this week. Nearly 3 years after it defaulted on its bonds, Zambia late last week announced a debt restructuring deal with key creditors, including China. This deal, which comes not as a relief to Zambia only, is also good news for struggling countries that are equally indebted. China has long been viewed as holding up a deal or delaying on establishing such deals. Its willingness to play ball on debt relief signals a possible path forward for other countries in distress, like Ghana or Ethiopia, which equally owe large amounts to China. Why does this deal matter to Zambia? It is undisputed that lengthy credits or loan schemes bring about delays in any real chance of economic recovery for any country indebted and the millions of people who live there, since the private sector lending community won't provide funds for a country in default. As U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said, "During my trip to Zambia earlier this year, I saw firsthand how the weight of default and a stalled debt restructuring process can bring suffering to ordinary families and hold back economic growth." Safe to say, without wavering, that the debt deal was clearly one of impoverishment and economic setback. But what happened this week that may be a game changer for Zambians following the president's address to China and Macron? In what seemed like an abusive statement, Zambia's president reached a deal agreement with China wherein he settled on an only 1% credit payment deal after Mission Impossible debt deal. Interest rates will rise after 14 years to a maximum of 2.5%. That is in the year 2037. Deal sets a precedent for other nations with unaffordable debt. Zambia has concluded the most difficult part of negotiations to restructure its debt and sees remaining being wrapped up soon, President Hakainde Hichilema said. He spoke with Bloomberg's Jennifer Zabasaja in Paris, where he attended a climate financing conference, as Bloomberg reports. The government of Zambia announced this landmark deal in Paris this week under the Group of 20's Common Framework Mechanism for traditional creditors of the Paris Club to negotiate deep relief alongside new lenders, especially China. And the nation must now get its private creditors to agree to comparable treatment. What were the exchange trade deals between Zambia and China? In 2021, Zambia exported $2.26 billion to China. The main products that Zambia exported to China were raw copper, $1.64 billion, refined copper, $340 million, and other stone articles, $64.2 million. During the last 26 years, the exports of Zambia to China have increased at an annualized rate of 31.8%, from $1.73 million in 1995 to $2.26 billion in 2021. In April 2023, China exported $85.8 million and imported $421 million from Zambia, resulting in a negative trade balance of $335 million. Between April 2022 and April 2023, the exports of China have increased by $31.2 million, or 57.3%, from $54.5 million to $85.8 million, while imports decreased by $172 million, or minus 29%, from $592 million to $421 million. In April 2023, the increase in China's year-by-year exports to Zambia was explained primarily by an increase in product exports and other steel bars, $5.34 million, or 751%, coated flat-rolled iron, $2.84 million, or 204%, and telephones, $2.44 million, or 326%. In April 2023, the decrease in China's year-by-year imports from Zambia was explained primarily by a decrease in product imports in cobalt, minus $1.24 million, or minus 38.6%, Preper binder for foundry, minus $184,000, or minus 27.3%, and feldspar, minus $86,300, or minus 58.3%. So a quick one to note is China is the largest official creditor to Zambia, with $4.1 billion owed to the Export-Import Bank of China alone, underlining the importance of Beijing's support for the deal. Zambia in 2020 became the first African country to default on its sovereign debt during the COVID-19 pandemic and struggled since then in protracted discussions to agree a deal. So what is this new debt repayment deal with China by Zambia's president all about? Zambia has reached an agreement on a debt treatment with our official creditors, a significant milestone in our journey towards economic recovery and growth. Zambia's president Hakainde Hichilema noted this on Twitter. The agreement who took place in Paris at a summit calls for Zambia's debt to be rescheduled over more than 20 years with a 3-year grace period during which only payments on interest are due. In all these, Zambia is taken as a test case for a debt restructuring framework backed by the Group of 20 wealthy nations and intended to streamline relief for countries caught in a developing world debt crisis sparked in part by the pandemic. Details of the debt earmarked for restructuring includes $1.3 billion in arrears, and private sector creditors are expected to do the same on the $6.8 billion owed to them, according to a French official's report. Zambia's president Hakainde Hichilema arrives to attend the 36th ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Zambia has struck a deal to restructure $6.3 billion in debt owed to governments abroad, including China, in a breakthrough for indebted nations around the world that have faced lengthy negotiations with their creditors. China is the largest official creditor to Zambia, with $4.1 billion owed to the Export-Import Bank of China alone, underlining the importance of Beijing's support for the deal. Zambia has reached an agreement on a debt treatment with our official creditors, a significant milestone in our journey towards economic recovery and growth. The process has, however, been painfully slow for Zambia, a fact that has discouraged all but a handful of other struggling governments from seeking help under the mechanism, a mechanism viewed as highly enslaving. China was keen not to be seen further holding up debt relief for Zambia at the summit, adding that French President Emmanuel Macron's talks with Chinese authorities in Beijing in April also helped unblock the situation. Macron called the debt restructuring deal a historic achievement. There is more to ensure that other countries caught in a similar debt trap benefit from a multilateral response that encourages and improves on the livelihoods of its citizens. A Zambian government source said the deal is really historic and due to meaningful efforts from creditors, notably China, predicting the next common framework debt overhaul would move on faster and ensure relief on Zambia as well as its citizens. This is where we call off things for today. Stay connected for more updates and happenings on economics, geopolitics, and tech news only at Cracked Info. If you are a returning viewer, do not forget to like and share. Click on our subscription button if you are just tuning in for the very first time. Thanks for watching. We will be back soon.